military spouses in general have something fantastic to offer. I have also been able to kind of tailor that to the needs of Squared Away and our clients. And during our application process, we screen for our pillars, which are the major operating points of Squared Away: being proactive, over-communicating, the ability to think outside the box. You would be surprised at how many people want to stop at Google search, first page. And then just being a team player. Our community is all about support. So if somebody's going out on maternity leave, watch their client for them. Hang out with them for a couple of months until they come back. Like, take care of each other. And I will give a shout out to my husband for that one, because ever since I've known him, his whole thing has been, my job is to take care of my clients.
Americans are capable of achieving extraordinary things when they have the freedom and opportunity to do so. This is American Potential.
Welcome to the American Potential Podcast. I'm your host, David Fromm. Today's guest is the definition of grit and determination, the kind of person who doesn't let uncertainty or tough circumstances hold her back. Like so many military spouses, she ended up learning what a struggle it could be to land a job, even though she was more than qualified. After marrying a Marine and going on several job interviews with no offers, she finally found a virtual assistant position that was a perfect fit because it could move with her. But then the unexpected happened. The company she worked for shut down. Instead of giving up, she kept her clients and started building her own business. And she didn't stop there. While raising a family, she kept growing the business. And when one of her clients needed more help, she saw an opportunity to help others. She started hiring fellow military spouses, giving them the same kind of remote, flexible work that had changed her life. Now, she's running a thriving company while solving a problem so many in the military community face. I want to welcome Michelle Penczak, who is CEO of Squared Away. Michelle, welcome. So happy that you chose to join us.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, well, so get right to it. I mean, you're the spouse of a Marine. How long have you guys been married?
12 years. I think we've actually lived in the same house for maybe 6, depending on how long he's been gone. So it's hard. It's wild to look back and see how long it's been.
Well, did you ever think you'd be a military spouse? I mean, how did you and your husband meet?
Oh my goodness. That's such a funny story. I always tell people I never wanted to marry a Marine, and I never wanted to live in North Carolina again. And then God laughed and said, watch this. My husband and I actually met at a wedding just outside of Richmond, Virginia. And I told him point blank, I was like, I don't like Marines. You guys have really bad haircuts. And then we just hit it off, and the story is we got married 6 months later. I know. My mom was like, I thought you said you never marry a Marine. I was like, well, God had other plans for me. So
yep.
It's been an interesting ride.
That's awesome. Good. Well, I think there's so many, we often honor folks who are in the military, certainly because it's due to them, the sacrifice that they're making. But so many times, the families are sacrificing so much and dealing with so much. So I really appreciate, his service, but kind of your service in a way, that, what you're doing to allow him to defend our nation.
No, it's always a pleasure. And I always see the greater good, and I love that he loves his job, taking care of Marines and us. And I'm just here to support in whatever capacity I can.
Well, so something that a lot of people don't think about is just what's the everyday life of a military family when you have a Marine, but then, you have a wife and eventually kids. Like, how does life happen, and the peculiarities that make it difficult? So, and obviously one of the big difficulties is just that you are potentially going to move a lot. And that's pretty hard to keep a job when you're moving frequently.
Oh, yeah.
So after you all got married, how many different job interviews did you go on? And, what did you end up realizing?
I lost count at in-person interviews at 20. Um,
Oh.
What I realized was, and we were in Eastern North Carolina, his first duty station was actually Jacksonville. And I would submit my resume, get a call for an interview. The interview would go great. And then I would get the question, well, what brings you to Jacksonville, North Carolina? If you've ever been here, it's not exactly a booming tourist attraction. It's mostly surrounded by Marines and locals and not much in between. And so I would say I'm a military spouse. My husband is a V-22 pilot stationed at New River. And then the conversation would go from what brings you here to, oh man, that's such a super cool platform. How do you get a ride on that? Yada, yada, yada. And no matter how hard I tried to bring it back to me and what I could do for their business, they would say, oh yeah, thanks for coming out. We'll be in touch. And then inevitably they would say, no, you're not the right fit, or we went with someone else. We want someone long-term. Apparently 3 years is temporary to some people, not for me. Definitely not at that time. So it was definitely an earthquake to what I was expecting going into my career prospects being a military spouse. I went into it bright-eyed and bushy-tailed saying, I'm supporting my husband. I want a career. I want to, bust my butt for whatever company that I work for. And that mentality just wasn't there on the employer side of the house.
So, I think it highlights something that I don't know, that I wasn't really connected to, but if I think about it, it makes all the sense in the world. You're moving around, potentially people would have concerns about a long-term employment relationship. So I imagine the unemployment rate for military spouses is abnormally high. Do you happen to know what that might be?
I do. It is 5 times the national average at 28%. And during COVID, it was even higher at 28%. And we've seen it as high as the 30s over the past 15 years.
Wow. So 1 in 3 spouses who want to work can't get a job now. Right now it's 1 in 5, but that's staggering. It's kind of the people that we wish were working.
Yes, exactly. And I think a lot of it is, well, your life is chaotic. Well, whose isn't these days? Let's be real. And you have these spouses that, yes, we are solo parenting 95% of the time, myself included. But where there's a will, there's a way. And I think if you have a military spouse applying to your company, don't sell them short just because they're a spouse. They're some of the most just resourceful people I've ever met in my life, because we have to be. And it's kind of like you get thrown into the deep end and it's sink or swim, figure it out. And I think if they're willing to work and put in the time, effort, and energy to do their diligence on your company and want to work for you, you should definitely give them the time of day to show you their capabilities.
Yeah. I'd echo that one. So after getting the virtual assistant job, how were you able to grow in that role? And what does it entail exactly?
Oh my goodness. It was actually very much in parallel with being a military spouse. Every day is different. My husband's schedule changes every single day. What he's doing, where he's going, what time he has to be there, what time he comes home. But I was working with clients from all over the world doing a multitude of different things that I had never done previously when I worked as a personal assistant live. And it was really cool because I was learning so much about so many different businesses and able to use processes and applications for several different clients and kind of educate them as well on how they could be better in their own businesses. So it was really cool to be able to do that. And when I worked for Zirtual, starting in 2013, that was incredible. I got great feedback. I became a manager and I was like, man, this is amazing. I'm rocking and rolling and I finally found my place. And we had a very interesting year that year. My husband left in January of 2014 and he came home from deployment in October. And we knew before he came home from that first deployment, he would be leaving again in July. So it was a very, very quick turnaround. Thanks, Marine Corps. But we also found out in that time that we were going to have our first little boy. So at that point, it became, okay, this is great for my career, but it's also really dependable for us as a family because we're adding a little one and finances and all that good stuff. It just made it that much easier. And it was flexible. So I would be able to have him home with me, which best of both worlds as a working mom. And when it was truly the worst country song written in life was we found out we were having a boy in the end of May 2015. Excuse me. My husband left in July, the end of July 2015, and I didn't have a job 3 weeks later.
Wow. So your actual company you're working for closed and you're pregnant with your first child, first trimester. Wow.
All the emotions, feelings, you name it. I think it just all was in my body that day. We had clients reaching out to us. I had team members reaching out to us because it was on the news, but they had not heard anything from the company and we hadn't either. So it was
oh wow,
earth shattering.
So I mean, what were your emotions going on there? At a lot of level, you're just woman who's pregnant, especially the first child, is kind of vulnerable, and then your husband's off fighting for his country, and
oh my gosh, yeah, I was actually my husband's brother was in the middle of PCSing from Germany to Japan, so he was actually coming home or crossing through the U.S. that week. So we had planned a family vacation in Hilton Head for that week. And so it was going to be me and my in-laws and my baby niece that I was meeting for the first time. And the bottom fell out on Monday morning. My mother-in-law, I think I gave her a stroke with how much I was crying and on the phone. And my sister-in-law kept telling me to sit down and eat a cracker because I was nauseous. And she was like scared I was going to lose it. It was high emotions for everybody that day. And my husband, funny enough, he was in Europe and he was on a mission, so he actually couldn't get back to me until late that evening. And I was like, he's like, "What's going on today?" And I said, "My world imploded," on the phone. And he was like, "But really, what just happened?" Emotions were high, extremely that day.
So am I correct in believing that your mother-in-law and your sister-in-law are also military spouses?
They both have been military spouses, and my mother-in-law was actually in the Navy. So
wow.
She was like, "I've tried to call Sean 15 times." And I was like, "Well, I've tried to call him about 20. My sister-in-law was trying to help." It was a whole thing. And I think everybody was worried I was going to go into premature labor that day.
Oh,
but
well,
it was wild.
Well, at least they were there for you. I imagine, just as an outsider, one of the things I've always understood is that even if it's not family, but military spouses are really there for one another and support one another and kind of become another type of family. Is that something that you experienced?
Oh, yes. When we were in Hawaii, I didn't know a single soul, military or otherwise, when we got there. And they became our friends that were family. We, as military spouses, the running joke is you take your kid to the park and you walk away with 4 emergency contacts for their school. But that's pretty much what it is. You have a limited timeline to build those friendships, and you're all kind of sitting in the same boat. So if your kid likes my kid, there's got to be something good here, and we can elaborate on that later. But it's just such a different mindset and community. If somebody needs something, they're going to be the first ones to offer it up. And how can I help you? What do you need? Your husband's deploying. You're not cooking dinner tonight. You guys are coming to my house, crazy kids and all. That's just what you're thrown into. And it's such a welcoming and loving community to have, no matter where you are.
That's great. What I like that we're going to get to is how you're kind of giving back and playing a role in that community. But so going back, so you're no longer at Zirtual. It closes down. You have a child, but I think you maintain some clients. Like, how did this become you starting a business?
So I worked for myself and my clients, and I added a few more along the way before I had my oldest in January of 2016. And I was getting constant client referrals. You have to go work with Michelle. You have to go work with Michelle. It was very humbling, but I could not take everybody on myself. And I knew, we found out in April of 2016 that we were moving to Hawaii. And I really didn't want to add anybody new. I wanted to maintain what I had and make sure I didn't lose anybody when we PCS, because 6 time zones gave me a headache for a hot second.
Yeah, well, so it was 6-hour difference between the East Coast and Hawaii. Wow, that's a challenge.
6 hours during spring forward, 5 hours during fall back. So it made calendaring very interesting. But all of my clients were on the East Coast. They were very supportive through me having Sawyer and taking 2 weeks off to do that. Please never do that, any mom out there.
You only took 2 hours, or 2 weeks off after having a baby?
I did, yes.
Oh, wow.
When you work for yourself, you got to make it work. But
yeah, I believe it.
It was great. They were all extremely fantastic and supportive about taking it easy with me when I first came back on. And I became a new mom. So I was kind of learning how to be a mom, how to balance all the things, still a military spouse. And it was a lot, but I made it work. And then we found out we were moving to Hawaii as soon as I got my bearings, pretty much. And I didn't want to scare all of them off, because I just had a baby and now I'm moving halfway across the world. What does their support look like? And I tried to kind of take their needs into consideration too, so that I can support them better. And so I took a week off to move, which they were very supportive of, but I didn't tell them where. And funny story, one of my clients, he was with me for like 10 years. He found out about a year after I moved that I'd moved to Hawaii. And he asked me if I'd lost my mind not telling him. And I said,
oh.
And he was like, well, I understand why you did it, but I wish you'd taken a little bit more time off so that you could handle that. And I was like, but you had no idea. So that means I did something good. But it was great. And, we moved to Hawaii, which was its own set of brand new challenges.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so then you were really building your client base, and you ended up scaling up by hiring folks. What were the challenges there? So now you're starting a business and growing it. I mean, there's an untold number of businesses that don't survive that. So, how did that go?
So I never saw myself as a CEO. Like, I am the person that got a C in econ in college. That was not my wheelhouse whatsoever, or at least I thought at that time. So I had no idea what I was doing. I knew how to provide the support, but I didn't know how to teach the needs. So, for our first few hires, I just brain dumped everything I knew into all of our new employees, and they started getting the hang of it. And then they started growing as leaders and taking initiative and being proactive and over communicating, which are some of our pillars at Squared Away. And they're all military spouses. So they all understood what was going on. And okay, well, we can look at this. And this is a really cool resource. So we started building our resource base based off of what military spouses used. And like I said, they're so resourceful and much better than Google. And our team operates like a beehive. So if someone needs support, they're reaching out to our team 99% of the time before they're Googling or chat GPTing anything, because we have such a great resource network internally. So it's been cool to see that grow kind of organically over time.
Yeah. So all the people that you've hired are military spouses. That's correct?
We have about 13 people on our team who are not military spouses.
Okay. And how big's the team in total?
We are just over 400 right now.
Are you kidding? That's amazing.
No,
Wow. You're every bit CEO. Come on.
I never saw it coming. I did not plan for this. I have said I don't know more than my own name, probably. But it's been such a great learning experience.
So roughly 375 of your employees or 385 of your employees are military spouses.
Yes.
Roughly.
Yeah, roughly.
That's amazing.
My husband likes to joke that when I started growing it, he was like, I thought you said you only wanted to like hire 20 people. And I was like, well, I'm like Oprah. You get a job, you get a job.
Military spouse Oprah. Excellent.
Exactly. But it was great because I wanted them to have something that I never had, which was a company that said, I want to support you because you are you. You don't have to hide that you're a military spouse in a job interview. You don't have to hide your resume gaps on your resume, because you were doing something. You were PCSing. You had 3 kids in 15 different sports. Your spouse is traveling all over the world, and you managed to keep everybody alive, happy, and organized. That in and of itself tells me that you can do something here. And just the stories coming out of that, the moms who had the same experience I did with not being able to get a job, the moms that were like, nobody wants to see the gaps in my resume in 15 different states. So who really wants to support that? And I was like, I do, me. Let's figure out a place for you.
So do you think that your openness and obviously direct knowledge of the challenges but the value that can be created by a military spouse is maybe your comparative advantage, or are there specific things that you do that tailor this kind of employment to military spouses?
I definitely think that military spouses in general have something fantastic to offer, but I have also been able to kind of tailor that to the needs of Squared Away and our clients. And during our application process, we screen for our pillars, which are the major operating points of Squared Away. It's being proactive, over communicating, the ability to think outside the box. You would be surprised at how many people want to stop at Google search first page. And then just being a team player. Our community is all about support. So if somebody's going out on maternity leave, watch their client for them, hang out with them for a couple of months until they come back, like take care of each other. And I will give a shout out to my husband for that one, because ever since I've known him, his whole thing has been, my job is to take care of my Marines. That's what I'm here for. And Squared Away, we take care of our clients, but we also want to take care of our assistants and spouses as well. So taking care of people, having integrity, saying when you mess up, and just owning it and move forward, I think builds that trust and reliability internally and with our clients.
So it sounds like Squared Away is doing really well. So, I mean, how would you characterize the trajectory it's on, and what, are there any specific success stories that you'd like to highlight?
Oh gosh. Yeah, it's wild to see where we are. Last year we did just about $15 million in revenue with just over, I believe, $28 million paid out to military families, which is insane that was able to go to military families, especially when I see so many needs in our community. But yeah, I mean, it's been a labor of love, and I've learned so much, but we're just doing amazing things, and our team is doing amazing things. But one story, and this might be a little bit long, so you'll have to forgive me. When just before Sean deployed in 2015, I heard a news story of this military family just up the road in Swansboro, North Carolina, and they were getting ready to PCS with their 5 kids. They had sent all of their kids to family in Texas while they were doing the move, and so they had support. And an absolutely tragic accident happened, and the military family lost 2 of their children. I was still in the early stages of being pregnant, and I did not know this family at all. And I prayed every night for Tiffany and her husband and her 3 kids. One of them lost their twin. And I thought about this family so much, and I just could not imagine. And right after Squared Away was launched, we had so many applications for military spouses coming in. And Tiffany McCauley, who was the mom, actually applied with Squared Away. And she sent a very nice email to my director of operations. And she said, I don't have a great resume. I was in the military. I've been a military spouse, homeschooling our kids, multiple PCSs. I would love to work with Squared Away in some capacity. And I read her email and I said, I want to get on a call with her. And she started, I didn't let on that I knew her story at all, but she started telling me the different things, the different MLMs that she had been a part of over the past few years since Sam and Mercy had passed away. And she was like, I just want something that is for the long term with my family. And I mean, at that point in time, I burst into tears. I was like, Tiffany, I've heard your story. I've followed your story from the day everything happened. And I've prayed for your family, and I've seen the chaos that you have had to endure with everything going on. And I would love for you to be a part of Squared Away. So she came to work for us, and then one of her clients offered her a chief of operations role at his company. So being able to see something so tragic and just rip your heart out every moment, and being able to support somebody in our community to that level, you could have knocked me over with a feather at that moment in time. It was the best full circle moment I've ever seen. And for Squared Away to be a part of those stories, I can't imagine anything better.
Oh, that's fabulous. What a tragedy. But, I think that there's people, clearly you're one of these in our communities that pick up other people and then maybe even put them in a position to realize all of their talents and kind of the fullness that they can become as a person. And that's a fabulous story. I think I'm just so inspired by what you're doing at Squared Away. It's clearly a labor of love. I think you said that, actually.
It's so worth it.
Yeah. I mean, it just seems like you're serving your community of military spouses, but you're also providing an amazing product and service that people wouldn't use if if they didn't value it and wanted to spend their money on it. So I think it's that win-win, mutually beneficial relationship that's, doing good in people's lives. And so, so humbled to be able to talk to you about it and kind of hear how you grew it.
Yeah.
Cool.
It's so wild to look back on it and see that it was launched in 2017, and here we are 8 years later. And I have a 9-year-old who grew up under Squared Away, essentially. He calls them my people on the computer. And I have a 6-year-old, or almost 6-year-old, in about a week. And I did take a month off with him. So not too
good.
But I was able to do that in Hawaii. Sean was also gone for that one, so that was fun. But I was able to do that because I had a great team in place that was able to support me. And over the years, I've seen that support go to so many other members of our team and our clients. And I'm just happy that they're not worried about their job when they have those life-changing moments.
Well, Michelle, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. I'm so happy to hear about this. It's just does my soul well. And we're just so pleased that there's people out there making a difference for their people, day in and day out. So I hope the best for your family and for Squared Away. Thanks so much for talking with us.
Of course. Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, thanks. Well, folks, Michelle's story really is pretty incredible. She just never took no for an answer. And not only did she find a way to support her own family, but now she's helping others who've been in that same boat. If you like this episode and would like to stay connected with the podcast, be sure to like and subscribe to our channel, as well as following us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. And always remember, liberty and freedom are easily taken for granted. Don't take it for granted. Go out there and defend freedom and liberty. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to American Potential. You may listen to more stories from Americans working every day to expand freedom and opportunity in their communities by visiting AmericanPotential.com.